Good morning. Today we're continuing our trek through Luther's small catechism in these daily devotions, looking today at the 9th and 10th commandments. And we're doing the 9th and 10th commandments together because, honestly, that's the way I teach them, and they are connected because they both have to do with coveting. The 9th commandment is, you shall not covet your neighbor's house, and the 10th commandment is, you shall not covet your neighbor's wife, workers, animals, or anything that belongs to your neighbor. And when Luther teaches us about what does this mean, well, with the 9th commandment, he says we should fear and love God, that we do not scheme to get our neighbor's house or inheritance or obtain it by show of right, but do all we can to help him keep it. And the 10th commandment is, what does this mean? We should fear and love God, that we do not force or entice away our neighbor's spouse, workers, animals, but help them to stay and do their duty, or urge them to stay and do their duty. The 9th and 10th commandment having to do with coveting, they're kind of different, aren't they? The 5th, 6th, 7th commandments are all very straightforward. No one ever really even questions those about being sinful or wrong. They're very outward, murdering someone, killing them, outwardly cheating with someone on your spouse or with someone else's spouse, or stealing from someone, and now you have their possessions in your possession instead of them. The 9th and 10th commandments really speak to where these sins come from. And what we find out from God is that they are just as evil and wrong as carrying out the deed itself. That the wanting, the lack of trust in God to provide you with good things, and the jealousy, the desire to take those things from your neighbor, that is just as evil of a sin as any of the actual actions of carrying them out. And that's really consistent with what God teaches us about sin, because all of our outward sins come from somewhere. They come from a heart that is sinful. And so even having that sinful condition in my heart where I want something that doesn't belong to me, even that is just as damning of a sin as actually the stealing, the carrying it out. And we do see how harmful this is, because ultimately it reflects a lack of trust and reliance on God. All of the commandments, as we've gone through them, they're all sins against the first commandment. And this one is no different. We don't trust that God has given us good things. We don't trust that God has given us the things that we need. And we also don't trust that God has given our neighbors the things that are appropriate for them to have. And so we desire to have the things our neighbors have for ourselves. One application to our current situation can go back to an application we made in the 7th commandment, and that is the hoarding thing. Let's use toilet paper as an example. If I think to myself very logically, well, toilet paper never goes bad, so why wouldn't I buy all of it from the store if I can afford it? Well, why wouldn't you? It comes down to your neighbor. You see, God has given us a purpose in this life, and that is to love and serve Him, and to carry that out by loving and serving our neighbor. And if I take all of the toilet paper in the store for myself, then none of my neighbors have access to something that they too need. And when I'm just placing it in the realm of self, I don't see anything wrong. I have what I need. I'm taken care of. I was taking care of myself. I was being a good steward. I didn't overspend on it, but I made sure that I would have enough. But this has left out your neighbor. And in a sense, you've already almost pre-coveted what your neighbor had. You said, well, I want this for myself, and I don't want to be in a situation where I don't have it, so I don't care what happens to my neighbor in his possession. It's almost like I've stolen it from him before he even had it. And it's not just, toilet paper or whatever the hoarding thing is today. This happens with a spouse, husband or wife. This happens with, if your neighbor has a business and you see they have a worker and you have a business and you want to take that worker from them, or it happens with property. And, this often comes up as families and brothers and sisters argue about who gets the inheritance from their parents and all sorts of things like this. And ultimately, they are reflecting a heart that does not trust God to take care of us, to love us the right way. We think, God, you don't know how to take care of us. You haven't given us the things that we need, and so I'm going to have to scheme to get them myself. It puts us in a bad place, and it reflects a bad light on us. And that's exactly what we should expect of ourselves as sinners. That's who we are. Selfish, not caring for others, seeking only after our own good. That is the epitome of the sinful nature. Praise be to God, then, that he has sent Jesus to replace that sinful nature with a new nature, to make a new person within us. You were made new when you were washed in the waters of your baptism. You are made someone who does serve God and neighbor first in their heart, who would be willing to give up what you have for the sake of your neighbor, who trusts that God will give you what you need, and so you can not worry about that and instead focus on showing love to others. Jesus has forgiven your sins. He's taken away the sin of coveting. He's taken away every sin that you've ever committed. They're not held against you. So now you have been freed to not covet, to trust, and to serve neighbor and God in love. Amen.